Hello my friends, my name is Lindsay and I run the blog Books for Christian Girls. Welcome to or welcome back to the little old corner of the internet where I talk mainly about Christian fiction. Today is a recent read, so I'll be discussing Christian fiction. I have a Christian non-fiction book. I've got clean fiction, being fantasy and romance. And then I have manga. I've got lots of different genres. As always, I have the timestamps listed down below for each book because I thought I only had like 10 books to talk about. I thought this was going to be a breeze. I have 21 books to talk about. Oh well. Oh well. I will also have the links to all of the full content reviews linked down below. If they are not available yet, I will link them on Goodreads and then eventually it will be on there. Some of these might not get reviewed more till the end of June, but just as a heads up, all those reviews will be linked down below. So to start us off, the first book, let's just knock out the nonfiction book, and that is Before You Meet Your Future Husband by Tricia Goyer and Robin Jones Gunn. I gave this book 4 stars, and I'm going to be honest, I felt so self-conscious reading this and marking it to my Goodreads, which is so weird because in high school I wouldn't have thought anything of it, but I'm fixing to be 24, and so it felt like I was sending a message to people that's like, I'm on the hunt kind of thing, and I don't know, I felt so self-conscious reviewing this book, but I did really like it. I just have to get over that feeling. It's neat though because yes, while it's all about like 30 questions to ask yourself about preparing and that kind of thing, it was a really neat devotional that wasn't just about that. It was more about being the person that God wants you to be and following Him, loving Him, and then being that potentially being a wife one day. And it was really neat though because it did mention twice about that marriage might not be what God has for you. And I really liked seeing that because that's not really something that's discussed super often, especially towards Christian young women. So the fact that the authors even like acknowledge that that's a very likely possibility, we don't know, you don't know, only the Lord knows, it was really neat to see that perspective as well. I would say it's probably more for the older girls because there are mentions of how this world has skewed our opinions or our thoughts or our view on marriage and intimacy and all that kind of thing. So it's definitely for the older range of young women, but it was a really good read, I have to say. It made me think about a lot of things. I did feel self-conscious reading it a little bit, which is so weird, but it was good. I enjoyed it. I did not read the prior book that kind of went along with this book. It was Praying for Your Future Husband by the same authors. I did not read that one, but I did like this one, so yeah, there you go. A nonfiction book. I never read nonfiction, but there is one. For middle grade, I read Whistle Stop West by Arleta, I think is the author's name, Richardson, and I gave this book 3 stars. This is book 2 in the Orphan Train series, which is a very interesting series. I liked the first book. I talked about it in another recent reads. This one though was a little, I think, harder to read about because the kids, this group of siblings, these 4 kids, are on an orphan train and they do face prejudice comments and that kind of thing, and that's hard to read about. I know it's history and it's realistic, that's what happened, but it doesn't make it really any easier to read about. I just wanted to like hug the kids and just rescue them from certain situations. And it's been a fine series thus far. I will be continuing it. My jury is out on their new family. I don't know about them yet, but hopefully it all works out, but I'll be reading to find out. I gave it 3 stars personally. For Christian fantasy, now I have like 3 other clean fantasy books that I'm putting at the end of this video. I want to try to differentiate more. These actually had Christian faith content in them, so that's why I'm putting these 3 here. But that first one I read was Cry of the Raven by Morgan L. Busse. I did own this book. I've already unhauled it, this whole trilogy. I did like this book better than the second one. I think the first book was very interesting. I talked about this a lot in my prior one, and it was really funny reading everyone's comments because I had already read that third one. Like, these videos, I'm sorry y'all, they are delayed. So I had already read it, but it was really interesting to see everyone's thoughts and opinions on that. So if you shared, thank you. because I was enjoying reading them. But this third book, it's still following the main girl, Celine, and she is a dream walker, so she's able to go into other people's dreams. And it's a really interesting concept. I liked different aspects of it. This one had less romance than the second book, because in the second book enters in a kind of marriage of convenience. It's more of marriage of safety, but that's not, that doesn't sound right, but that's basically what it was. And so I was not a fan of the second book because of a fade to black scene and then the spiritual warfare content. It felt that way to me. And so unfortunately the series was not what I was hoping, mainly because of the second book. Had the second book not had those elements, I probably would have kept the series. I thought it was a really interesting series, but it's definitely more new adult than young adult because of certain content. But yeah, it is. I read it. I'm sorry I didn't enjoy it. I'm so sorry if you love this series and I've broke your heart. I'm so sorry. The next book in the Christian fantasy category was R.E.M. or R.E.M. I think it's R.E.M. I think would be how we say it. And it's by Ashley Schaller, I think is how you pronounce the author's last name. I gave it 3.5. I thought it was a really interesting concept. And what I really would love to talk about is a spoiler. So I can't talk about that, obviously. Bummer. But it is about a main girl and she's being told that her best friend is in danger in her dreams. And so her best friend's dream guardian has, again with these dreams, what is it I'm noticing? And there's going to be another book I'm going to talk about where it has to do with dream world, so that's interesting. But she's being told by her best friend's guardian, and he's like this coffee-obsessed British guy, that she's in danger and he needs her to come with him to help save her from her own dreams. And it kind of had that Alice in Wonderland feel because of that. And, like, Alice in Wonderland meets a fever dream. Have y'all ever had a dream when, like, you have, like, 103, 102 temperature, and it's just the weirdest thing? Like, you don't know what's going on. Like, it feels real, it doesn't feel real. There's, like, weirdness happening. That's kind of how this book, it was like a mashup between those two, and it was really interesting. How the ending, though, oh my goodness, that ending made the book for me. I will easily say, like, that was fast. I would love to, like, read a spin-off because of that ending, and I can't say anything more, but the ending made the book for me. At first I was very unsure about it. I was very unsure about this whole dream world and like how this all relates and all that kind of stuff. I was very confused because, you know, me and fantasy, we're not the best mix. I am trying to. Obviously, I have 6 fantasy books to talk about in this video, but it was really interesting. It was really interesting, but that ending is what really made it good to me. I liked the ending a lot, so I can't say anything about the ending. I want to talk about the ending so bad, but I won't. But it was really interesting. It was really interesting. The next book was definitely, would this be my winner for this video? Yes, it is the winner for this video. So this is my top rated book. I gave it 4.5 stars, bumped it up to a 5 on Goodreads, and that is The Lady of Lanaria, maybe is how you pronounce it. I'm not sure, by Michaela Busse. This is a Rapunzel retelling. I was sold right there, but it does have Christian faith content, and that's what had me even more intrigued. And this was just such a good retelling. And yes, my mind did go to Tangled a lot because I've seen that movie. I know that movie like the back of my hand. But it stands out. It stands out because of different things. So like the main guy, Gabriel, he is almost as far as you could get from Flynn Rider. Like, Gabriel's very sweet. He's a guard, so there's the whole guard versus thief kind of thing. But he's just such a sweet guy. He was so encouraging to her, very protective of our main Rapunzel character. And it was just so well done. Here's the thing about retellings. We can read them all the time, right? They're maybe not all the time, but we read them often enough, I feel like. And even though we know the plot line, we know what's going to happen, we know how they reveal, like, what the end result is, it's seeing how the authors take it and change it and what they do. And it was really interesting. It was really interesting to have Christian faith content in a Rapunzel retelling that was just very much that classic retelling. Like, yes, there is The Golden Braid by Melanie Dickerson, but I feel like I enjoyed this book way more. I'd have to reread The Golden Braid. It's been so long since I've read that one. But I just really loved how the faith content played in this one. And with our Mother Gothel, if you will. She's not Gothel, she's Mother. But with her, it enters in the whole kind of witchcraft kind of element, which is, I know, a red flag. I get it, totally get a red flag. But our main girl, Evangeline, or Eva, she wants nothing to do with it. She wants absolutely nothing to do with it. She knows it's not right. And she knows it's not right because when Mother brought a big thing of books, if you will, like a crate of books, a Holy Bible was in it. And she's read that. And of course, Mother was very upset about that. But Eva has such a hungering to read that and learn more and just truly believes it. So it was really neat to see that Christian faith content. It was really good. This is on my birthday list for this year because I would love to have a copy of this book for my shelves. It was just really, really well done. If I had to pick a favorite retelling, this is definitely in my top picks because it was just really neat. It was really neat. For the mystery suspense category, we'll come back to fantasy in a minute, but for mystery suspense, I read one suspense book, and that was Blind Trust by Natalie Walters. This was by far my favorite book of this trilogy. I gave it 3 stars. I really liked Layla and Nicholas, or Garcia. She called him Nicholas, everyone else called him Garcia. But I really liked them in different regards. They were the couple when I first read the first book, Lights Out. Yeah, Lights Out, Fatal Code, Blind Trust. I think that's the order. And when I read the first one, I didn't really care about anyone else. I wanted their story. So I was excited to finally read their story. I still don't think this author is my favorite or ever going to be a favorite, but it was neat to finish out the series. Again, it is about it's called the Snap Agency trilogy, and then there's a prequel novella as well. And this, you really have to have the prequel novella to appreciate this third book. I think more like read the novella before you read this third book because they're very much connected. And it was interesting how different things happened and the reveal. It wasn't my favorite suspense book ever. No, not at all. But I did still enjoy it. I think just the concept of this trilogy alone is really neat because it's like different members from different organizations that have left those organizations, so like CIA, FBI, the Navy, that kind of thing. They have left and they have been hand-selected to be a part of this team, and they are basically a agency, but they don't have to follow all the red tape or the politics that enters in on like the FBI, CIA, that kind of thing. So I really liked the concept. The first 2 books were misses for me. I've talked about those before. But this third book was better. I liked this book better. I wish we could have seen a bit more at the end because it felt a little rushed. But, you know, not bad. Not bad. I finished the trilogy. So that's the important thing. I finished it. Okay, moving on into historical. I get a rant about a book. Are you ready for a rant? Let me find my notes on ranting because, y'all, this book was just, let's see. I talked about this book as an anticipated release book for this year, the first half of 2022, and that is The Keys to Gramercy Park. I don't know if that's how you say it, by Candice Sue Patterson. Okay, gorgeous cover. I'm going to be bluntly honest here. Waste of a beautiful cover for this book. I DNF'd it at 50%. The final straw was a Fade to Black scene. We already know I don't like those. But besides the fact of that, there were so many moral problems that I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, it was ridiculous. It is a spoiler, but I have that spoiler listed down below. Basically, it's a dual time period one. We've got our main couples in the original and the present day. That's the word I'm looking for. In the present day, she is a journalist, and then we've got an up-and-coming young politician, and I'm sorry, he was just slarmy. He was slimy. I didn't like him. He was too slick. He was sus, like giant red flag waving in my opinion. But they had their little moments. In the historical time period, we follow 2 brothers. We've got Edward, who was on the wrong side of the law. He was a piece of work. And then we have Franklin, who's on the good side of the law. And Franklin is really the only Christian element in this. Like, I didn't really have anything from the present day up to what I read. It could have changed, but I'm not going to read to find out because of issues I had. But so Frank, their father was terrible and abusive. The two boys, just terribly abusive, because Edward, the one that's on the wrong side of the law, has a clubbed foot, and it's just, that's, the father was terrible. Had the father been better, their lives would have been different. And that just, it cements in stone for me the fact that a childhood is so important. The upbringing of a child is so important, and their experiences in their childhood, because that shapes them as an adult. And it's just, this book really showcased that, and not, unfortunately, in a good way. So they're on opposite, okay, so anyway, they're on opposite sides of the law, and Edward is making counterfeit money. Franklin works with the Secret Service, I think, and he, like, sneaks in and, like, you know, goes undercover, finds out his brother's making counterfeit money, things happen. Can I talk about the spoiler? Oh my goodness, I want to talk about the spoiler, because this just, oh, I was so mad. Y'all, I was spitting mad. I was so mad about, where do I do this? Where did I stop my spoiler? Because where can I talk about it? Okay, you know what? I'm going to put a timestamp. If you would like me not to hear the spoiler, skip ahead to whatever timestamp I have here, because I need to talk about this. So, guns are drawn, of course, and our good guy Franklin gets killed by his brother. His identical twin brother. His identical twin brother Edward, who's on the wrong side of the law, then takes on our Franklin, his brother's identity. Goes home to his wife, who's just had a baby, is dealing with postpartum depression, and Edward, the brother that was on the wrong side of the law that killed his identical brother, that is now posing as his brother, just straight up lust for his sister-in-law. And then it, y'all, I was so mad, because they sleep in separate rooms at first, but then he's just like hinting. Faith starts kissing her hardly, and fade to black scene into the bedroom, messing with the clothing, and I'm just not there for that. I'm just not there for that. Not there for that any time. And it was so gross, because like she, at the point I read, I don't know, maybe she did know it wasn't her husband, but y'all, like, the poor girl's already very much struggling with postpartum depression and suicidal thoughts, apparently, is what we're being told. And then this all y'all, I was so mad. He was already such a bitter and hateful, just terrible person. And then he does that kind of thing, and it sounds like it stayed a secret for almost 200 years, until our main girl in present day is starting to discover things and find some of the counterfeit money, and it has to do with the main guy in the present day's family, you know, and things always have to be connected, obviously. And it was just, it was a waste of time and a waste of a beautiful cover. I was so incredibly disappointed by the content and just how that all worked out. Like, not even just like personally, but morally, that it felt so wrong. It just felt wrong. Things could have gotten better, but I wasn't gonna stay around to find out. So that was so annoying. I was so mad. That book annoyed me so much. I was so mad. I haven't been that mad over a book in a long time. That was just, anyway, moving on. From that book, I have In the Shadows of the River by Anne H. Gabhart. This was my first book by this author that was historical. I'd read one of her murder mysteries, cozy mysteries before. I totally forgot about that until I finished this book and looked up the author's Goodreads page and found that out. So that doesn't really tell you that I really enjoyed that book. But this one was interesting, but not, it was slow. Yeah, it was very slow. I gave it 3 stars because it was decently clean in the general sense. I don't think I'd recommend it for younger readers. But my main problem here, let me explain this to y'all. There's 3 paragraphs, okay? So, main girl in 1881 is J.C. Reed. She was 5 years old when a man attempts to kidnap her, and that her mother works on. It's all set on the steamboat, riverboat, showboat, that kind of concept. And so that's the first 100 pages. I kid you not, the first 100 pages. The next one is 15 years later. She's an actress. There's this guy who's a kind friend. She thinks of him as a brother. He says he's not a brother because he likes her, obviously. So that's the next 150 pages. And then we have when someone on the showboat tries to kill her. It's clear that questions demand answers, and that's like the last 80 pages. Boop! Right there. There goes the book. Like, you can just read the back cover. Why would you do that? I don't understand that at all. That completely, honestly ruined the book in that regard for me because the pacing was just so slow because I knew what was going to happen. We have 100 years of her, 100 years, it felt like 100 years. We have 100 pages of her being 5 years old and then 150 pages of her and like being introduced. And oh, here's the other thing. We're told at the beginning, like her birth story and all that in the first 100 pages. In that first part 1, we're told that. We are told it again in the second part. And we are told it again in the third part. And it's from different perspectives, but they all basically have the same story. So it's not really like we were given more details or like things became clearer. It was already clear within the first 100 pages. So I struggled with that, y'all. I'm sorry. I'm not the only one that's had that opinion. I have seen other reviewers mention how slow this book felt as well. And I truly think it's because we've read the back cover. We know what's going to happen. We're like, okay, let's get to the mystery aspect. But no, she's 5 years old for 100 pages. And then we eventually get there. I don't know, y'all, it was slow. I'm sorry. Gorgeous cover. But it was slow. I mean, cleanliness-wise, it wasn't bad because there is the whole mentions of illegitimate children and children born out of wedlock. That is a very prominent topic. And there's like alluding to that kind of stuff and like how that happens kind of thing. But I do think it would go over younger readers' heads. It wasn't very entertaining of a read for me to recommend it. So, I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say, y'all. Like, I'm sorry, but it wasn't entertaining enough for me. The next book I read was The Swindler's Daughter by Stephania H. McGee. I gave this book 3 stars. I was really hesitant about this book because I wasn't a fan of the author's prior book, which was The Secrets of Emberworld. That wasn't my thing. This one, though, was better, in my opinion. I liked the main girl more than the girl in that one, and that makes a big difference. This one, though, I feel like the title is a little misleading, but it was okay because it kind of worked. It turned out okay. The main premise of the story, though, is that our main girl, Lillian, side note, her name is Lillian Grace, and I just thought that was so funny because that was supposed to be my name. Instead of Lindsay Grace, I was supposed to be Lillian Grace. I was supposed to be named after 2 of my great-grandmothers, but it got changed, so I'm Lindsay Grace. But I just thought it was so funny because it was spelled exactly the way my family would have done it, so I just thought that was a really funny little, like, what a coincidence kind of thing. So she's always believed that her father either died a long time ago, but now she's receiving news that her father just passed away in jail and has left her to inherit his house and his part of his company. Okay then. And we have a little bit of a mystery in that regard, and it was a chill read. I have to be honest, any of the suspense moments didn't really feel suspenseful to me, but it was interesting. It was just, it was overall pleasant, I guess you could say. I do have the full content review down below, of course, but there wasn't really too much to say about it, I really feel like. There wasn't necessarily a miscommunication trope, but there was a lack of communication between Lillian and then the main guy, Jonah. And now Jonah has been under the impression that him and his family will be able, who he is the sole provider for, will be able to live in her father's house. But that's not how the will goes, and she gets to inherit all of it, so they really have to kind of work together. And he just had a lot of trust issues, which I get, but it kind of, I just wanted them to talk. Like, I just wanted to lock them in a room and make them talk, because let's get on with things, y'all, you know? Like, just talk. Like, things can be solved if you just would talk it out, and it took a while to get there. I can't call it an excellent book, but it was pretty good, and it kept my attention. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. The next book is A Mark of Grace by Kimberly Woodhouse. This is book 3 in the Secrets of the Canyon trilogy, and I definitely plan on getting this one because this whole series was just so nice. It was just so nice, and what really was nice was how much faith content it was. So if you really like faith content and discussions and seeing the characters live out their faiths on the pages, I would recommend this trilogy because it was really neat just because of that. But it's set around the premise of the Harvey House girls, and this is the third book, so it's following someone we've seen in the prior two books, and then we get to see those couples from the prior books in this one, so that was really neat. But it's set at the Grand Canyon, and things happened in the second book to our main girl in this book, and it's really shattered her confidence, and different things have happened, and it's just been really hard for her. But seeing the faith content and like from her going very much a Christian mentor in the first two books, and then in this book, the beginning, she's just very disheartened and upset because of things that happened. And then we see that, I don't know the exact word, but I personally know that feeling where you just accept the Lord's will. And that, it was really neat to read it. I read it at a very timely time and I definitely plan to get it. The main guy, Frank, we see him in the other two books, and he is such a sweetheart to the girls, but definitely not in a romance way to them, but in a big brother protector kind of vibe, and giving them godly advice and that kind of thing. Like, he was just a great guy. But in this book, he was precious. He was sincerely praying to the Lord about having a relationship with the main girl, Ruth. And that was just oh, you win me over right there, because that's precious when the guys sincerely pray about when would be a good time to start a relationship with this girl, and wanting to honor God in their relationship, and just sweetness. Like, I love that. I don't get to see that much, even in Christian fiction. The majority of the Christian fiction I read, I don't see that. So seeing that just honestly made my day and made this book for me, because that's just preciousness. I love it. I love it so much. So I definitely plan to get this third book, and yeah, I already own the first two books in the series, but I definitely need to get my hands on this one. I think I really, really would have loved this trilogy when I was like 14, 15, because that was like the height of my historical fiction romance reading, I would say, and it was just so clean and faith-filled, and just it had a little bit of a mystery in each book and a little bit of suspense. I feel like I really would have loved it then. So if you like historical fiction, and maybe for those on the younger side, early high school, maybe 13 and up, you might check out my reviews of this series, because they were good. They were really good. So my last historical book for this category today is The Tapestry of Grace by Kim Vogel Sawyer. This is her new release book, and this was just so lovely. I gave it 4 stars, easy 4 stars. I don't really know how to explain it well, because it does have the matchmaking kind of trope, but not in the traditionally normal way. And this is a hard book to describe, because I feel like even the back cover, like, it tells you a good amount about it, but I feel like it doesn't do it completely good justice, because it was just so sweet. And it follows our main girl, Augusta, which that's a fun name. That's so pretty. And she is a widow. She has a daughter who's, how old is she? She's like 10 or 11, something like that. The sweetheart, such a sweetheart. Oh my goodness, I loved the daughter. She has to be one of my very favorite kids. Both her and the twins have to be my favorite kids I've read about in a long time. Like, they were just great kids. They were very, like, realistic, but they were great, but they had their moments, but, like, they were just great kids. Really, like, they kind of stole the show, I'm not gonna lie. So we have them, and then there is, I don't know, what does he do? I think he's a blacksmith. I think the main guy in this is a blacksmith, or he works in that kind of stuff. And he is a widow, and he has 2 young boys, twin boys, and they are mischievous, but it was they were great. They were like some of the best written kids I think I've ever read. And so there is a beloved, is that how you say it? A beloved. I have only ever seen that word. I don't think I've ever tried to say it with my actual mouth. Beloved Society. So, like, they help. It's a church group of women that help those in their community in their town that need help. So like orphans, widows, that kind of thing. And so they kind of get involved trying to help, and sometimes that help doesn't go well because real life people, if that is not realistic. But it was just really, it was a really sweet read. And just the ending, I loved how the ending worked out. And again, it's one of those front porch reads where you just want to read on a sunny day outside. It's one of those books. So if you like those books, I hope you'll check this one out. It was a very easy 4 stars. It kind of had, it definitely, well, I say kind of. I think it's just the author's writing style. So it did remind me of The Librarian of Boone's Hollow, but it's by the same author. So I think it's just the writing style. But there's also a character in here that if we did not see her point of view, we probably would dislike her. So kind of like Bettina in that series, in that duology, but we see character development, that's all that matters. So it's a really good book. I feel like I'm rambling here, but it was a really sweet book. Okay, moving on to secular, then clean, then manga, and we are almost done, friends. The first book for secular would be The Pear Affair by Judith Eagle. I gave this book 1 star. It was weird. I'm sorry. It honestly kind of just felt depressing because the concept was great. It's all about this girl who has been off to boarding school and wants to find what happened to her nanny that was really the only human that treated her well. And so she goes home for break. Now the problem I have, basically all the adults in this were terrible. And I don't agree with that message, and I unfortunately see it pretty often. But yeah, they were terrible. Her parents were terrible to her, very verbally abusive, just terrible human beings, and they were constantly saying how they didn't want her, and she knew that, and like just like their snide comments to her and just not caring. She had to make like a sandwich for herself because they didn't order takeout for her, and so she had to make like a moldy sandwich or something. Like, it was terrible. Like so there was that aspect, and they were horrible to her. So I really struggled with all that. And then like the other adults in it are just kind of terrible as well. And so like, I don't know, y'all. This book was just disappointing. I had hoped I would like it because I'm always on the hunt for a good, cute middle grade book. Always on the hunt. So I was like, hey, maybe this one will be it. This is not it. And even the ending, it wasn't satisfying. And you would think it would have been satisfying, but I did not find it satisfying. It was very meh. And it felt wrong, really. I can't say because of spoilers, but I do have a review where I talk about it, and I don't know. It was a weird book. So I gave it 1 star. Okay, moving on into clean fantasy. The first book I get to talk about is Enchanced by Candice Kade, which I was really looking forward to reading. I don't remember a single thing about that book now. It's been like not even a month, and I don't even remember a single thing about it. So that's not great. I gave it 2.5. I'm trying to remember about this book just reading the back cover, and I have to be honest, not much of this is like triggering in my brain. I did think it was really neat that it was like set in futuristic China, so in that regard it kind of reminded me of the Lunar Chronicles and like the technology aspects, and that there's kind of cyborg-esque people, so it definitely had that style. So it's set in a world where when the baby is in the womb, they are able to edit the genes. So if they want them to be able to swim underwater like a dolphin, they add gills or whatever. Or if they want them to be super athletic, they add like a sporty gene or something. So it's a little eerie, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I feel like we are way closer to that than we know about in society. So it definitely gave me some things to think about. But the thing is, with our main girl, she is a natural, meaning she has no additional additions, if you will. She was adopted by a super, I think is what it's called? An enhanced, no, I'm sorry, they're called enhanced. A enhanced family, so all the other members have enhanced features. So one can swim underwater. I don't remember about the sister, but like they all have, like they're really smart or something. They were enhanced. And she's the only one. So she's having, and like, you know, it has to do with like the class. So like those that are enhanced are obviously more important, deemed more important than those that are normal or a natural. So she has to fake being enhanced. And so we have a lot of very close calls. So it had a little bit of the suspense stuff on that regard of, girl, be cautious. This girl's stressing me out kind of thing. It was interesting. It was an interesting concept. Would I read the second book? I don't know about that. When it releases, I did have high hopes for this one. I really wanted to like it. But it's just, there was different things. It was clean. There was no Christian content. There were mentions of evolving and evolution-based comments, which I'm not a fan of seeing personally. I don't know, y'all. It was interesting. Those who like fantasy, clean fantasy, might be interested in it. I'd be curious your opinions on it. But I really liked like all the Asian cultural things in it, like with the food and the outfits and the architecture. I thought that was all really cool. I really liked that element. So there were elements I liked, but it's not really a good sign that it hasn't been a month. I read this on April 22nd. I am filming this on May 19th. It hasn't even been a month, and I don't remember much about it. That's not really a good sign on my enjoyment level. Obviously, I gave it 2.5, but yeah, it is what it is. The next clean fantasy book I read was actually our Christian Booktuber's pick for April, I think, and I finally read it in May, but that's fine. I think it was April's pick, and that was Vivid by Ashley, and I think it's Bustamante. I think that's it. And it was really interesting hearing everybody's different opinions on this book. I actually liked it, and I'm shocked. It definitely is clean fiction, though. There is no Christian faith content. And it was interesting, though. I gave it 4 stars. I think I'd rather give it like a 3.75, but that's a little much, so I won't do that. That's like a little extra of me to do, but I think that would better fit how I feel about it. But this was really interesting because it was the whole color magic fantasy element, and have I read any of that? Maybe I've read 1 or 2 books that are like that, but not many. Oh no, Fox by Nadine Brandes. That was one that had color magic. I wasn't a fan of that one, but that's because that was historical fantasy. And that was just odd to me. But this one was very interesting because, again, it's that contemporary setting, but has just little differences of, like, today's society, and then, but everyone has color magic. And what was really cool about this book, though, is it was kind of like this country that they live in is in the Bermuda Triangle, and that's why it's special. Like, that nobody leaves, nobody's able to get in or get out because they always disappear or die or there's a storm, and that's because it's the Bermuda Triangle. So I have to admit, I really like that because I love hearing the conspiracy theories on the Bermuda Triangle and like Antarctica and all that. I think that's very interesting. So I got into that part, I won't lie. But our main girl is Ava, and she had her moments of YA teen angst, I'm not gonna lie. She had her moments. I'm just like, this is a bad decision. What are you doing? And she did it anyway, but it worked out because it was fiction. That's how you know it's fiction, because it worked out. So it had its moments, and it was really fun to hear a different booktubers' opinion on this book, because some of us loved it, some of us liked it, some of us did not like it, and it was very entertaining. But I think, was it the best? Like, it's one of those books that it might not have the best lessons in it, but it was entertaining to read about. Because, I mean, she follows a cute guy into the woods. I don't recommend doing that, obviously. But he's cute, so, you know, and she's curious. And, you know, the whole curiosity killed the cat. I think there's a phrase about that, but it is what it is. It was entertaining, though. And it was entertaining enough that I picked up the second book. So the second book just released here in May, and that is Radiant by the same author, book 2, and I've read this as a buddy read with Holly and Celestria, and it's been so fun chatting about that book with them. I've never really done an official buddy read, so it's been really neat to like go back and forth on the chapters and like say what we think and everything. It's been really neat. So I gave the second book 3 stars. I think the main problem I had with it was Ava, the main girl, is just she gets very kind of whiny and she lashes out, and I just wanted to like give her vitamin B or something because I know that would improve her hormones and it would help. It would help. But so like she frustrated me for a good amount of the book that I just kind of wanted to smack sense into her. And once she eventually figured out what was happening, there was a reason, and it has to do with the magic, of course. But then it got better. So I liked it. I can't talk too much about it. It's book 2. I didn't like it as much as the first book, but it does end on a cliffhanger, so I will read the third book. I'm very excited about that third book because I'm curious how things are going to go. I don't know when that's releasing, probably next year, but I would definitely check it out and read it because I've become intrigued about this world. The color magic is a very interesting, magic system. I'm not really big into fantasy like we've talked before. I know you probably don't believe me because I just talked about 6 fantasy books in one video, but it's just not, fantasy isn't a really, like, it's not typically the genre I gravitate towards, but I have been lately because I know they'll occupy my mind. And it's been interesting to compare all the different worlds and how authors do it differently and like all the different types of it, and especially when it enters in with magic. I know that's a really touchy topic in the Christian community, and I thought it was interesting though. I think it really depends on the family's perspective of that kind of thing and if this book would be okay or not. But it was interesting. It was interesting to read about. I would read book 3 when it releases. Okay, for clean romances, I read 2, and now the first one, I feel like, please keep your tomatoes, go use them for salsa or something, don't throw them at me. But that would be Falling for Your Best Friend's Twin by Emma St. Clair. I gave it 2 stars, but I think that's very generous, but it's clean romance-ish. And there were parts that made me laugh, but there were also a lot of parts that made me uncomfortable. And obviously this is the best friend's brother trope, and let's just put it this way. I like my books to be squeakier than this one was. Like, yes, there was no bedroom scenes or anything like that. It's just, there was quite a bit of innuendos and like talking about sleeping around that I was just like, you know, I don't think this book is for me. I think that's pretty common for this author. So like if you've read Ginny B. Jones' adult books, not her YA ones, but if you've read her adult ones, I feel like this was a little bit more innuendos than that, for sure. But like kind of very similar writing styles. But I think Ginny B. Jones might be funnier. I laughed with Falling for Your Best Friend's Twin Brother. I laughed, but it was mainly an embarrassment. Because I was like, girl, I would have like just like moved to Timbuktu if this happened to me personally, but I was stressed for her. And then, I don't know, there was just quite a bit of innuendos, and like there was a jerky guy that just kept making comments towards her and other women, and I didn't enjoy it. So there's that. My family is home. I've been filming all day. I apologize for the noises. But the next book I read was a baseball themed clean romance, and that was The Curveball by Megan Cousins. 2-3 stars, I don't know. Like, there is a fade to black scene, and that was like meh. Again, you only have to have these. I don't need to know about that. I went to a ball game though recently, and I was in the mood for a baseball rom-com, and that's actually really hard to find. Most sports romance books are hockey. I blame Book Talk for that because, oh my word, they're obsessed with hockey. I don't know why, but I found one clean baseball book, and you know, it wasn't bad. I think I would have preferred more baseball content because by the end of it, it felt more heavy about the main girl's struggles, and the main girl struggles with PCOS. I don't remember what it stands for, but basically it has to do with women health and the cysts and the ovaries and that kind of thing, and it's just terrible, bless her heart. I am very much more on that natural health side. I have, not to be TMI, but like I have made my periods way better by doing different health regarding things, and so I kind of just wanted to like help her with that. I kind of lost interest in the romance. I just wanted her to get better, and I wanted to give her all of these things to potentially try and hopefully help kind of thing. So my mind was kind of more on that by the end of the book. But they were cute together. There is also a lot of breaking the glass ceiling because she is a producer for a baseball show, and he is a retired pitcher that got injured very early in his career, but he was like one of the best, of course. And so he is now a co-host on the show, but she's the producer, so she's not on the show. But being a woman in a not only male dominant field, but a sports field, she has a lot of those comments drifted, a lot of sexist comments and a bit of sexual harassment. And thankfully it does not go over the top. Like, we don't get to see much of it as a reader, which I was glad about, but it's definitely, it's a very important thing, and that really defines her, is about breaking the glass ceiling of being a woman in the field of baseball. And it was interesting to see that at the beginning, but I will admit, because I don't have experience with that, of being in a male-dominant field, I really didn't relate to her story at all, so I was kind of done with it by the end. I mean, there's a lot of noticing. There's quite a bit of noticing in this book. There's some kissing. It wasn't great. Okay, so my camera battery just died, and I have no idea what I was saying. I think I was talking about the Curveball, and it wasn't great. It wasn't excellent by any means, but it's definitely how I look at clean fantasy books, especially if they're available on KU. I just look at it as a kind of a time waster, a time filler. Maybe a time filler would be a better way to put it. But just that kind of thing. Like, I just want to read for a couple hours. I don't really want to have to think about anything. I'm just gonna, you know, it's that Hallmark movie analogy I gave a couple videos ago. It's like that. So, yeah, it wasn't bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. So, that's good. There was no language. There was no language, and God's name wasn't taken in vain at all. So that was nice. That was nice. The last series / category I have to talk about is manga, and I actually unfortunately don't have much to say about this series, but I reread the Orange series, and this is volume or collection 1, and then I read collection 2, and then the 2 other like spin-off books that are about these characters, but the 4th one just came out here recently, and so I reread the whole series because of that one. And this is a really interesting series. When I had read them the first time, I read them online, and, well, let me come back to that. This whole series is about this group of friends that we see. We have these 3 and then these 3. It's a group of 6. Our main girl gets a letter from herself in the future, and it's all about being there for the new friend of their group, a young guy, and that he's going to potentially commit suicide, and they need to stop him. And so her and the others go on this mission to just be there for him. And I'm not gonna lie, I cried a lot. And I think what was interesting though is when I read this book the first time, this whole series the first time, I really struggled with like keeping track of who is who and who was talking. But now that I've read more manga, I was able to follow along a lot better, and I was able, I think, to enjoy it more because of them. There is cussing. I will have that in the comment in my Goodreads review. But I think what was interesting is when I first read this series, I read it online, and they had like bonus scenes of another manga by this author, and I didn't like that at all, so that really tainted my enjoyment when I read Orange for the first time. And I totally, I didn't read those at all this second read through, and I really enjoyed it more. There is still cussing, but it's nowhere near as much as the other manga that was we were getting a couple chapters here and there of, and I don't like that. That series was a mess. I didn't like that one. So I didn't realize the volume collection didn't have that it's not even a side story, because it's not even about these characters. It's about 2 twin girls, and they're just weird. So it doesn't even have them in this volume collection, which I was really excited to see that. I was really excited because I don't know why you would include both, but I enjoyed it. I don't really have too much to say about it. It's a harder series. It's definitely, how do they rate? They rate this as teen, but I feel like it needs an actual age range for that, because it does deal with this very serious topic of suicide and depression and grief. And I cried, but I love the friend groups. And I think that's really been something I've noticed when I read manga. I love it when there is a strong friend group. I love that in general in any fiction books, but I see that the most often in manga books, and that's really neat. I love seeing that friend group. And then just the 2, we have this collection volume, and then there's the second collection volume, and then the author did a much shorter, I think it's that big roughly, one of them in the future, and then this new one that came out is kind of got that what if kind of thing of just different aspects. I can't say much because of spoilers, but it is, I see why this is a classic manga series. I feel like it's a classic. I feel like I always hear people talk about this one. But yeah, it was good. It was good. It definitely had its hard moments. There is language. But it was a very interesting style, and I'm glad I read it for the second time, because the first time I was like, I like this, but I don't get the hype about it. This read through, I get the hype because I was able to follow along better and figure out what was happening and who was talking, who was who, which time period are we in, because it kind of goes back and forth on the time periods of present day and that alternate world future. It was interesting. It was really interesting. Okay, my friends, that is it for this video. I only own 4 of the books, and I'll be unhauling Shadows of the River, but I only have 4 of the books to hold up, so that will be an easy thumbnail picture to do. But that is all the books I've read recently, within the last month, basically, about the last month. And so some of these I had to dust the cobwebs off of my brain about, but other than that, I think I did okay. I feel like I rambled a lot. Did I ramble a lot? I'm sorry if I rambled a lot. Hopefully this video was still entertaining though. I'd love to know if you've read any of these. My gem of the book for, my book that was a gem for this video was definitely The Lady of Lanaria maybe? I don't know how to pronounce it. I feel like it's a really simple to pronounce word, but oh well. I did really like that book. I'll definitely be getting a physical copy of that book and a few other ones that I talked about today, so that's always exciting. Like I said, I'd love to discuss any of these books with y'all in the comments below. If you've read them, do you want to read them? What have you been reading lately? And I will see y'all next time. Thank you so much for watching. I am Lindsay from the blog booksforchristiangirls.blogspot.com, where there is a new review every Monday and Friday. I try to post a new video on this channel every other Friday, and then I'm also on Instagram pretty often, and TikTok and Goodreads and all those places, and I'd love to see y'all everywhere or anywhere, and I will see y'all next time. Have an absolutely lovely rest of your day. Bye!